goal! Oh my goodness!
Right on to Nilton. He chips it.
Fabian with a shot. Upper corner, top shot.
Oh, what a goal!
Out to Reagan. He does a game winner.
What's going on, everybody? This is MASL Monday. Alex Bastiavansky, my good friend, producer Phil Levanko, back for another week. What's going on, buddy? How was your Sunday, by the way? Was it as good as my Sunday?
Had better. I've had better soccer weekends. The USA, I believe the proper term is a disaster class.
It wasn't. It wasn't. By the way, welcome everybody. Alex, Phil, catch us every Monday on CBS Galazzo, MASL TV on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, where we get your podcasts. We love the fact that you're tuning in. We have to get just a touch of banter in.
Yes.
About the fact that, well, first of all, let me just do my chant. We're number three. Talking about my Canadian boys. Knocking off the Americans 2-1 yesterday. And of course, eating crow on Thursday because Canada was actually, believe it or not, I think we were kind of favored against Mexico, which is a position that we're not used to being in. But everyone was writing off this Mexican team. But you can never do that with Mexico. And by the way, folks, Oscar Sanchez, our Spanish content director, is coming on the next segment to probably give it to us pretty good in regards to the Mexico win, but also talk about the Chihuahua Savage and in the MASL. But, listen, I'm not super thrilled by the way that Canada performed overall. I was pretty happy on Sunday. I thought, especially in the second half, wow, you guys really got to find something now. What's going on right now?
It's super underwhelming, right? I was completely underwhelmed by Mauricio Pochettino, his lineups, his subs, all the players they've got that combination of doesn't look like they're trying, and being put in difficult spots to succeed. So not great, with not a lot of windows left before the 26 World Cup. And I think that Gold Cup, now you got to call everyone in because this was so bad.
Well, it wasn't supposed to be, right? Like the announcers kept saying that this is the last competitive game essentially before the World Cup because everything else is Gold Cup where they're not bringing full rosters for and then friendlies. But now it kind of changes the stakes a bit if you want to tune up. But anyway, so let's get into the last week in the league, which was
our indoor league.
Our indoor league. It's crunch time now. We've got one more week of play, and that's it before the postseason kicks off. And some massive games. Tacoma, Kansas City, and we talked about basically Tacoma needed to win both games to keep their playoff hopes alive against Kansas City. Third in the standings. And man, Tacoma pulled it off, not without controversy though, Phil. So take us through what happened and what was so controversial.
So we can talk about the games, but really we would be remiss if we're not talking about this Friday night controversy in Tacoma. 4-3 Stars lead, top of the box restart where Kansas City Zach Regan thinks he scored the leveler to send it to OT, which has massive playoff implications for Tacoma. 3 points, 2 points. Goes to video review. The goal is disallowed. And, if you're a Comets fan, player, manager, you've got to be fired up. Second time this year that a game was decided in the hands of the referee. And for me, I think the takeaways are two, right? First off, you need more production angles. We need more angles on these games to help out the referees, right? We showed that one angle, and it just doesn't show us enough, right? It does not put our referees in a position to succeed.
You need the behind the net camera there that's showing that other angle because you can't see it. That's why I'm a little baffled why, of course, you do under review with Ryan Sigich. Everyone look for that on MASL TV this week because you're going to get a lot of views on that, Phil, because Ryan will break down his thoughts on it because it's originally called a goal and it's inconclusive to me anyway on the replay. Listen, I don't have a dog in this fight. I just want it to be fair for all teams, right? And like I think about the Utica call against San Diego earlier in the season as well, where, a goal got disallowed. Anyway, I could go on and on, but to me, I didn't quite get this one because to me, it was inconclusive. So you and Ryan are going to have a lot to, and it ended up being a 4-3 Tacoma win. And as you mentioned, that the full 3 points essential to Tacoma in their playoff drive. And then are you going to show, by the way, the some of the stuff on from Instagram and
yeah, let's
everything
show
that
this. So
was-
obviously the comments were very
Yeah.
hot, and rightly so, right? Here is their Facebook post after the game, not telling the full story, then it's a difficult one, right? Heat of the moment type stuff on social media, but for us, we got to show this stuff, right? This is news, right? So here's what the comments sort of came out with right away. Here's sort of sending our show a little plug here. They're indisputable video evidence. It's a tough one for sure. That's why we need more camera angles.
Yep. Yeah.
And here's Zach Reggett's Instagram story after the game, and it's a difficult one. I understand his frustration on this one. Now, no guarantee, right? The Comets were going to win this game in overtime, but it's a difficult one. If you're a Comets fan, he was hot. He was hot.
And every right to be. And then Tacoma wins 5-4 in the return match in Kansas City on Sunday, which did surprise me a little bit because I thought Casey was going to be really up for that game. But listen, Tacoma, we've got to give them full marks right now. This is the Tacoma that at the beginning of the season we were so high on that went into that huge lull, and now they're fighting for their playoff lives. But anyway, it was really,
and they're in great position. We got to mention, right? 5 points in that 8th
but
playoff
St.
spot.
Louis controls their own destiny, right? Stars have one game left, and it's against San Diego. Let's move on to St. Louis here quickly. We'll just really quickly go over this. They blow out Mesquite on Friday. Congratulations, James Thomas goals 100 and 101 in his career. Ambush 7-3 in their last 10, 4-1 in their last 5. They are hot at just the right time. They are behind, of course, in the standings as compared to Tacoma right now as we speak. Tacoma 32 points, St. Louis 27, 2 games in hand though. So St. Louis does control their own destiny, Phil, if they can win out in their remaining games.
Tuesday night against Dallas. And then they've got 2 against Milwaukee. Now you're thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to be playing their former player, Frank Tayu, but no.
Frank can't
Gentleman's agreement, not allowed to play. I think this is something the league has to look at because I don't know. I don't know because he's traded, so I don't know about this one.
But as much as we've talked about the race for 8th here, there's another scenario that we haven't touched too much on, which we kind of just realized. We were like, well, hold on for a second here. Empire is not completely safe in all this, right? If St. Louis wins out, and if Tacoma wins against San Diego,
that's right.
This is interesting because Empire has 1 game left, and they're only 2 points ahead of the Stars. So there is a scenario in place where the Stars could finish above the Strikers. Could you imagine, after all that, if Empire ends up missing the playoffs? Not saying it will happen, but that would be insane.
And we have to talk about their weekend against San Diego too, right? They played 2 great games against the Sockers. First one in Front Wave Arena, which was a tight game all the way to the end, just sloppy passes.
Strikers controlled it for much of the way.
Yes,
leading at halftime for much of the way. They let it slip out of their hands. Yeah.
And I can't let this go, Alex. Last night's game in overtime, still playing the pull the goalie system, cough it up. Now it's a great goal by Leo, right? Great technique,
beautiful goal
in the back of the neck. But I just don't know. They're going to live by the sword and die by the sword, right, Alex?
Yeah.
But I'm imploring Empire to have a rethink for the playoffs. Imploring.
They got bigger, what's than I do, man. Because I'll tell you, man, like I wouldn't I'd be much more cautious in that scenario. Look, we're not the coach here. No, boss has done such a
this
great
is rock
job
and roll
this year.
blackjack. I don't know
rock
if I
and
can
roll,
do it.
but like we said before, of all the teams in the league, Empire is probably the most exciting because you just never know what is going to happen.
Yes.
Because they play such a high risk system, right? High risk, high reward. So now we got to see, can the Strikers win a game in San Diego? There's so many interesting scenarios as we get into this last week of play. It's like grab your popcorn. Yeah.
The way that it might settle in is San Diego playing Empire again in Front Wave. Empire haven't beaten San Diego in over 2 years, right? So we talk about this as a rivalry. This is kind of like Yankees Red Sox back in the day, right? When the Yankees did all the winning. They're dangerous, but they finally have to.
They
just leave the goalie in the net in overtime.
They're right there. Remember how the Red Sox, any Red Sox fan, of course you remember this. down
Yeah.
3-0 to the Yankees back in what was
Yeah.
it, 2004 or something along those lines. Come back and win.
Yep.
Empire's due, man. If they can make it into the playoffs, they are due for something. But yeah, they've got to. I mean, the goals like that in overtime are just killers.
Yeah.
Anyway, when we come back, our good buddy Oscar Sanchez will be here to talk about the Chihuahua Savage. More MASL Monday coming back in just a second. Welcome back to MASL Monday, folks. It's Alex Bastian, it's Phil Lavanco, and we are happy to be joined for the first time this season, I think, Phil, by our Spanish content manager south of the border. It's Oscar Sanchez,
the king of CONCACAF.
The king of CONCACAF once again. And Oscar gets to rib us today.
Yeah.
Congratulations, my friend. I'm not gonna lie. Thursday stung as a Canadian badly. For once, we were not the underdogs, and I think that might have affected stuff a little bit. But great performance by and of course, you guys beat Panama yesterday to win gold. Congratulations once again. Just really quick, what are your thoughts on that Mexican victory and the team that a lot of people counted out, but Mexico proving once again it had the experience to come through?
Yeah, I think. How are you guys? Thank you for having me first. And about Mexico, I think that we don't have too much expectation about the team, but we realize that Raúl Jiménez is having a great time in England, and now is on the national team doing it good. Like his very best days are now. So we are trying. Well, he's gonna try to do it good to the World Cup, but we didn't expect this, honestly. But it's true. I think it's a great performance for the striker, for the Mexican striker. Now we have Jimenez at Milan, so maybe that's what we were looking for after Chicharito.
It's a tough time to be Raúl Jimenez, right? Movie star, good looks, star striker for his country.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, lifted trophies. But no, congratulations. And you, of course, our Spanish content manager. So we're going to have a good little chat today about Chihuahua and the Savage and what they've done so far this season. It's par for the course. Chihuahua, I mean, second place right now, technically in the standings, but with a game in hand on the Sockers. So let's just talk about that first. Chihuahua has some work to do this weekend. They've got 2 games against Harrisburg. There's always an opportunity you could possibly trip up, but they got to win these 2 games, Oscar, and then basically they control their own destiny if they were to make it to the championship final.
Yeah, these 2 games are very, very important for them because playing the final at home is going to be a huge difference. We know that in Corner Sport Arena, they play real good. They had not lose since March 7, 2024. Yeah. They have a goal average at home impressive. They have 100 of difference of goal right now. 100,
Yeah.
The difference between the next one is like 60 goals, something like that in difference. So they are a huge contender. They are 2-time champions in a row. Now I think Chihuahua is doing it good with 3 different coaches. That's huge. They have first a Cameron Sanchez, then Genoni Martinez, and now Chevo Martinez. 3 different coaches, but the team plays so good that I think that's their main strength.
I wanted to ask you about Jorge Rios. He's the leading candidate for MVP. I want to just ask a little bit. Can you share about his background, his story? What is Rios all about?
He was signed by Chihuahua, and the first season he was the MVP of the final of the championship series against Baltimore. But he was injured most of the season. But at the end, at the finals, he started playing, and at the semifinal he was so. But in the final, he was a huge difference for Chihuahua. Then last year he was injured most of the season. I think a knee trouble. And then at the end, he started playing also, and he was good. He was just good, I think. Not at this level he's showing this season. This season he has been healthy all the year, and now he's making a big difference. He has been showing his real level and his real skills.
Oscar, you mentioned, of course, two-time defending champions going for a third this year. I wanted to ask you then, how would you rank this Chihuahua team compared to the other two championship squads? What's your feeling about this team in terms of the strength, top to bottom? Tell us your thoughts on that.
Maybe from the 1 to 3, you think? I think here now we can have the second. I think last year was stronger, but I don't know. I think Henoni's experience as coach, I think, is a little bit different. But now they have more experience, and now they have the situation that are not going to play the first rounds of playoff at home.
Yeah.
That's also a huge and important thing to watch. So I think this could be the second in the third teams that I will rank in, because in the first they had no experience at the final. They earned it. In the second they have Henoni and his experience in that kind of games, and now Chevo is doing good. We know this is the $1 million winner, but they are not going to play the first rounds in playoff at home. I think that's going to be I'm not saying that they can win. They win everywhere. We know they are a great team, but it's a different stage for them.
Well, let me ask you, do you think they can win on the big field? We've kind of danced around it, right? That the games are going to be in San Diego and not at Corner Sport. Do you think that they can win a couple games at Corner Sport to get to the Ron Newman Cup Finals?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think. Well, now I think they are the number one on the scene, not in the standing, but maybe as the power they have every team. I think they had won in San Diego to advance to the final in the last 2 years. So I think they can do it. But now those things are different from the prior 2 seasons.
It's going to be fascinating to watch. Of course, it all comes down. Everyone's got to tune in because it all comes down to this weekend. Chihuahua, of course, does control its own destiny in regards to where they will finish in playoff standing. They got to win those 2 games against Harrisburg. And and then they could basically take it out of San Diego's hands, right? So, but can't wait to watch. Oscar will do this again soon. Once again, as much as it hurts me to say it, congratulations on being the champions of CONCACAF again. And we'll see you next time, buddy. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Anytime,
What's going on, folks? Welcome back to MASL Monday. It is Alex. It is Phil as we enter our final segment of our final show of the regular season.
One more last weekend of the regular season. Oh, I guess you're right.
That's it finishes on Sunday, right?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
So this is our last show of the regular season, which means we got to wrap up the big games that are happening this weekend. Before we get to that, though, let's just quickly do a Milwaukee, Utica, Baltimore. Quick little thing here. Milwaukee taking down Baltimore 7-5. Utica falling to Baltimore 9-7. Wave all over Texas. So Milwaukee gets some much needed wins.
6 points, yeah.
Gets that 6 points.
Throwing it in my face because I called them old.
Did you say old? Did you say old legs?
I
think either way you kind of did. Yeah, I don't
spin
think
it the way they're going to
spin
spin
or not,
but
it'll
end up. It'll end up in some sort of dunk on Phil reel.
I think that there's a dartboard with a Phil Lovanco picture 100%. In the dressing room.
Yeah, the Midwest is filled with them.
But look, it's yeah, for sure. You're not going to a Brewers game anytime soon.
No, fly over
but listen, it's got to be said. Like, Milwaukee, great to have those 2 wins. Baltimore, great to pick up a win. But last 10 games, Baltimore 3 wins in their last 10.
Yeah.
Utica 5-5 in their last 10. Milwaukee 5-5 in their last 10. You don't want to limp into the playoffs, right?
No.
And these teams have got to get some momentum going, which is why it would be great for Milwaukee, as we're about to get into with their 2 games against St. Louis this weekend. Huge for both teams, Milwaukee from a momentum standpoint, and also, from St. Louis because they're fighting for the playoffs lives. So let's talk about the real big games that have playoff ramifications this weekend. Chihuahua and Harrisburg, never thought we'd be talking about, Chihuahua, Harrisburg, big thing,
Yeah.
Harrisburg way out of it. But Chihuahua needs to win both these games, Phil,
Yes.
in order to retain number one overall, the Shield.
Yes.
But more importantly, the number one thing to them is that at the end of the day, if they can retain number one in the standings, then they will have home floor advantage if they can make it to the championship.
Right. And that's really what it comes down to. We want to remind everybody it's the quarterfinals and semifinals in San Diego, but the Ron Newman Cup Finals is a home and home between the teams, and they really want that second game in corner sport. We've talked about it all season. It's their superpower. That's what they care about. They've traveled a full squad all year. I don't expect anything less this weekend in Harrisburg.
They should take care of business.
Yeah.
St. Louis needs to win out. It's as simple as that. They do control their own destiny. Looking at the standings, of course, St. Louis currently 5 points behind Tacoma with 2 games in hand. They need to win games. They need to win in regulation. So Dallas would love to trip them up. They would absolutely love to trip them up. But I'll tell you,
Dallas got secretly important at their job this weekend.
They absolutely did. And St. Louis is they're hot right now. They're 7-3 and 10, 4-1 their last 5. And man, they've been looking good, but this is it now. They can't stumble, right?
And it's 2 away games, right? This is a big ask, right? It's got a game in Dallas and a game in Milwaukee sandwiched in between that home game against
and
Milwaukee.
A home game in St. Louis, right? So big for momentum for Milwaukee, as we said, to try and keep it going into the playoffs, but bigger for St. Louis because they're fighting for their playoff lives. So 2 very motivated teams going into that encounter. We've got to talk about, we talked about the Empire angle.
Yeah.
Empire's got a game in Dallas on Saturday. They got to win that game. I mean, to lock things up. So again, Dallas has 2 opportunities to trip teams up.
Yeah.
This week.
You got to bring Fabian too, right? Like we can't, Fabian didn't travel to San Diego in that game, right? You got to bring him to this Dallas game. You got to make sure you make the playoffs, right? Yeah. So if I'm Empire, I got to bring my full squad to this one.
100%.
And leave the goalkeeper in the net.
Yep. And then you've got Tacoma. 1 game left against San Diego on Sunday. And that game means something to the Sockers, as we've talked about as well, because there is an opportunity, if by chance Chihuahua drops a game and San Diego wins, that San Diego could get into that first spot again.
And they're going to know. They're going to know because Chihuahua season's over by the time they kick off, right? So they're going to know exactly what they need, and they get Tavoy back, who missed a game this weekend by red card. Right. So they need to figure out the pieces too, right? The defense is going to lead them, but they need the offense too. Morales and Mendez and Childs, who scored his 300th MASL goal. They need them all.
Yeah. And I mean the St. Louis Milwaukee game, which is the return match on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
So Sunday's going to be a real fun day to watch, folks.
I hope you didn't have any plans this weekend.
Oh, no. Why would I ever have plans? Come on. I've got no life. MASL is my life, buddy. That's it.
Quad box it. You have to quad box all of these games this weekend.
That's it. So Ambush Wave 6:05 Eastern and Stars Soccer's 9:05 Eastern. You've also got Comets Blast that day and the Chihuahua Heat. And so anyway, it's going to be a great weekend. We'll be back, of course, next Monday
to wrap it all up.
Everything up and take us into the playoffs, let you know where everyone stands, who made it, who didn't. Folks, just remember also to tune in for Under Review with Phil and Ryan later on in the week, because, oh man, that's going to be a fun one. I can't wait to hear what Ryan has to say. But a big thanks to our buddy Oscar Sanchez for joining us today and giving us the Mexican perspective and his great insight into Chihuahua.
It's a great story on Rios.
Mm-hmm. Thank you to my good buddy Phil Levanco. Hopefully you're nursing those wounds from your national team. But
it's all right.
I know I had to do it. Just a little bit
bad.
It's for once. Every once in a while, Canadian soccer never used to win. We're actually winning games these days a little bit. I know. I said, we're number 3. We got it. We'll take anything we've got. But all in good fun. Anyway, thanks, buddy. Really appreciate it as usual. Great work.